Artemis II will be the first time we put humans on this rocket.
On April 1st, 2026, 4 human beings climbed into a capsule and left Earth. Not to the International Space Station, not to low Earth orbit, to the Moon. For the first time since 1972. And if you are watching this, whether it was yesterday, last week, or years from now, what happened on that day deserves more than a headline. It deserves to be understood. Start with what Artemis II actually was. Not what NASA called it, not what the press releases said, what it actually was. It was the first time in over half a century that human beings traveled beyond the protective boundary of low Earth orbit. The first time the Orion spacecraft carried a crew. The first time the most powerful rocket NASA has ever built lifted people off the ground and aimed them, not at a space station 400 kilometers above Earth, but at the Moon, 384,000 kilometers away. It was a test flight, but it was the kind of test flight that changes everything that comes after it. The 4 people who flew this mission were not chosen randomly. Reid Wiseman commanded the mission. He spent years learning his crew the way you learn a language, not from a book, but from living inside it. He could read their faces under stress. He knew when a decision needed to be made before anyone said a word. His rule, repeated so many times it became reflex: no fast hands in the cockpit. In a vehicle moving at speeds that make the concept of reaction time almost meaningless, patience is not a virtue. It is the difference between a mission that succeeds and one that does not. Victor Glover flew as pilot, the first black man to travel beyond low Earth orbit. But ask him what that means and he will redirect you. Not because it doesn't matter, but because he wants something more than a milestone. He wants a future where a kid who looks like him looks at the sky and doesn't think, maybe someday. He thinks about the day when none of this has to be called a first, when it is simply human history. Christina Koch flew as mission specialist, the first woman to travel around the Moon. Before she was an astronaut, she wintered over at the South Pole, stood at the geographic bottom of the world, white in every direction as far as she could see. No mountain to break the horizon, just white reaching out until it met the sky. She knows what it is to be somewhere most people will never go. And she knows that the only reason someone can imagine a place they have never been is because someone who has been there came back and told them what it felt like. Jeremy Hansen flew as mission specialist, Canadian Space Agency, the first non-American to travel to the Moon. He wore a patch on his arm designed by an Anishinaabe artist, a quiet statement that this mission did not belong to one country, one culture, or one way of seeing the sky. He said it simply: it is not just 3 Americans and a Canadian. It is people from around the world. These 4 people did not think of themselves as historic figures. They thought of themselves as a crew. The rocket that carried them is called the Space Launch System. It produces more thrust at liftoff than almost any vehicle ever built by human hands. When those engines ignited, when that machine began to move, it was not graceful. It was not quiet. It was an act of controlled violence. 8.8 million pounds of thrust pushing against the weight of gravity and winning. And inside that capsule, 4 people felt the ground disappear beneath them. But here is what most people missed about Artemis II. This was not a mission where everything was already known. This was the first time this vehicle had ever carried human beings. The first time these systems had ever operated with a crew inside them. And the people on board knew, in precise technical detail, exactly how much they did not know. The proximity operations demo. Getting within 10 meters of their own upper stage rocket manually with no rangefinder. No instrument telling them how far away it was. Just their eyes, their training, and geometry. Reading the size of the object through the window to judge the distance in the silence of deep space. Victor Glover described it as one of the most important things they would do. Not because it was dramatic, because future missions that would actually land on the moon, needed to know that a human crew could control this vehicle manually if the automation failed. The life support systems. Carbon dioxide venting that had never been tested with a crew aboard. Systems that would affect navigation in ways that no simulation could fully predict. Things they would only discover once they left Earth and could not come back from. The exercise device. A machine in a spacecraft so small that one person exercising could affect the solar arrays, the attitude of the vehicle, the experience of everyone else inside. Christina Koch said it plainly. There are so many things that are new. Those are the big ones that none of our simulators can adequately address on the ground. Every single one of these unknowns was the point. Artemis II existed to find them, to document them, to bring that data home so that Artemis III, the mission that will actually land humans on the moon, could be built on something real instead of something assumed. The trajectory they flew is called a free return. It means the moon's gravity does the work of bringing them home. If the engine failed, if the systems degraded, if something went wrong in the silence between Earth and the moon, the physics of the trajectory would still carry them back. It is the same trajectory that saved the crew of Apollo 13. It is not chosen out of fear. It is chosen out of respect for what deep space actually is. The crew understood this completely. Their suits were designed to keep them alive for 144 hours, 6 days, in the event of a total cabin pressure loss. Every abort option, every contingency, every emergency scenario was built around that 6-day window. You cannot say you are going to the moon, one of them said, until basically the mission is over. They meant it. On the far side of the moon, the side that faces permanently away from Earth, Artemis II got a view that no human eyes had ever witnessed before. The Oriental Basin, a crater so vast it can be glimpsed from Earth through a powerful telescope, but never fully seen. Never seen the way you see something when you are close enough to feel the scale of it pressing against you through the window of a spacecraft. Roughly 60% of the far side of the moon has never been seen by human eyes. Not in photographs taken from orbit, not through any telescope on Earth. By human eyes, with human vision, in real time. Artemis II changed that. 4 people saw something that no human being in all of history had ever seen before. And they were the first. When they came home, after 10 days, after a trajectory that carried them further from Earth than any human beings since Apollo 13, they re-entered the atmosphere at roughly 40,000 kilometers per hour. The heat shield absorbed what physics demanded of it. The parachutes opened. The capsule descended into the Pacific Ocean, and 4 people who had traveled around the moon came home. Here is what Artemis II actually was. Not a stunt, not nostalgia for Apollo dressed up in new hardware, not a flag-planting exercise designed to generate headlines. It was a test, a rigorous, deliberate, unforgiving test of a system that is going to take human beings back to the surface of the moon, and eventually, further. Every piece of data collected feeds into Artemis III. Every anomaly documented, every system verified, every procedure refined. All of it goes into making the next mission safer, more capable, more ready. Victor Glover said it clearly. The question is not whether humanity should go further into the solar system. The question is whether we lead or whether we follow. Artemis II was the answer. There is a moment from the days before launch that stayed with Reid Wiseman. He was at breakfast with his crew. They were laughing, hard enough that someone was crying. And Christina Koch started talking about what it was like to stand at the South Pole. The white that stretched in every direction with no mountain to break it. The silence. The sun that didn't set. And Wiseman said that as she talked, he could see it. He could feel the cold. He could imagine standing exactly where she had stood, even though he had never been there. And the only reason that was possible was because someone who had been there was telling him what it felt like. That is what exploration is. Someone going somewhere most people will never go and coming back to tell us what it felt like. So that eventually, not today, maybe not in our lifetimes, but eventually, it won't feel so far away. 53 years. That is how long humanity waited to send people back toward the moon. On April 1st, 2026, the waiting ended. Not with a landing, not yet, but with 4 people in a capsule, flying further from Earth than anyone had gone in over half a century, proving that when humanity decides to go somewhere, we go. The moon was always the destination. Artemis II just reminded us why.